Hello and welcome to Narrative Forge Productions. In today's episode, I wanted to talk about the first episode of The Mark. So if you haven't already, go check out my audio drama The Mark. It's on Spotify and YouTube, and I'm hoping to get it on other platforms soon. As I'm recording this, the first 4 episodes have been released, and in these videos I'm just going to talk about things relating to the show and other topics as well. So in today's video, as I said, we're going to be talking about episode 1 of The Mark. And today I wanted to talk about cliffhangers. And as soon as I say cliffhangers, you guys are probably imagining, in your favorite film when at the end of season 3 or whenever your favorite character was literally hanging off the edge of a cliff, or something major was about to happen and then the episode ended and then you had to go to the next episode to find out what happened. That's kind of what we generally think about with a cliffhanger, but what I want to talk about today is something a little different. I don't know if there's a specific technical term for this, but I refer to it as micro cliffhangers. So a micro cliffhanger, what is it? It is something that gets your listener or your reader or your viewer to go from episode 1 to episode 2, and from episode 2 to episode 3, and so on. A micro cliffhanger gives your audience a reason to move on to the next segment of your show or your book or whatever. So I'll give you an example. In episode 1 of The Mark, we have several micro cliffhangers, and usually when I put micro cliffhangers in my works, they're usually in the form of questions that your audience has about the show. So, for example, in episode 1, Ethan says the sickness remained with him. That's one of the first lines of the show. So we have the question, well, what is this sickness? Why is it remaining with him? So we're already wondering what that is. Soon after, he falls into a dream where he then wakes up in the jungle in his dream and is confronted by this mysterious woman who tells him about several things he's doing wrong in his life and how he needs to overcome the obstacles set before him. And she also says he needs to beware of the flower, or be careful when dealing with the flower. So that's like an overload right there. A questions overload. There's so many things that we have questions about already, and probably if you've listened to the show, you probably have other questions as well. And so we're wondering, where are all the answers to this coming from? And if there was no questions in episode 1, if I hadn't brought any in, and it was just, very uniform and didn't have any parts that needed answered, then nobody would listen to episode 2, I'd imagine, unless they really like the show. But putting in those micro cliffhangers in the form of questions really gives your listener the desire to listen to the next episode, the need almost, because they want to have their questions answered. And so that's a bunch of questions that we've just set in episode 1. And then in episode 2, some of those are answered. Well, the sickness is that Ethan has been struggling to sleep, and when he does, he's confronted by these horrible nightmares that are more than just nightmares to him. And we're already answering some questions. If in episode 2, none of the questions, or even episode 3, if none of the questions that were brought in episode 1 were answered, then people would start to get a little frustrated. Now, you don't have to answer all of them. For example, the last one, be careful when dealing with the flower, that is going to take a long time being uncovered, because the way I'm going to structure the show is be careful in dealing with the flower. The flower is going to be a very, very big part structurally and in terms of the story. So that's not going to be answered immediately. That's going to take probably the entire show to fully uncover why he needs to be careful dealing with the flower. Other questions though, like what the sickness is that he has, or some other smaller questions, they get answered almost immediately in the next episode or the next 2 episodes. So you want to make sure that at least some of your questions are being answered. I'd probably say at minimum 50%. That's very subjective though, but I'd probably go with about 50% of the questions you raise in one episode get answered in the next episode or the episode after. If none of your questions go answered, then the listener or reader or viewer is going to forget about most of the questions and probably stop listening or watching or reading, whatever form of writing you do. They're going to stop tuning in because none of their questions are being answered. So you want to make sure that you raise a question or more every episode, and then every episode you also answer some of the questions from the last episode, or every couple of episodes you answer some of the questions. Now, like I said, not all of them have to be answered. Some questions are going to be carried on through the entire series, and that's fine. But you just want to make sure that at least some of them get answered to give your readers a sense of, well, if these questions are being answered, I know the other ones are going to be answered at some point. So if you haven't been doing this already in your stories or whatever form of writing you do, then I'd recommend doing it because it definitely brings some engagement with your audience and gives them a reason to keep listening. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video, and I hope you have a great day. I'll see you in the next one.